Okay, so it's real now, everybody. Look out. We've got a few more folks coming in. For okay, yeah, don't do that. Everybody awake? Okay, cool. Glad to hear it. Once again, welcome to the July 30th. I cannot believe it's already July 30th steering committee meeting. We've got a very big agenda tonight, lots of stuff to discuss. We are going to be using the Mentimeter piece that I talked about a little bit earlier. Those of you who are participating online, you got a copy of that as well. And for those of you that are joining us here in person, as they come around, you'll see it. Brooke, you're right over here on my left. So please don't share that with anybody else. You want to just keep that for yourself. And if you found your spot, you are Simon.
Over here.
Oh, over here. Sorry, Simon. Okay, so one thing, I know we're probably not used to this, but I'm going to be actually calling roll today. Very quickly, if you're here, just let me know that you're here, and the same thing for the folks online. And we'll be updating this a little bit. But I'm just going to go right down the list. Adam Holt. Not here yet. Okay. Chuck Yaden.
Here.
Okay, Wendy's running late. Lino. Chuck Riojas. Brooke, you're here. Karen Musson.
Here.
Thank you, Karen. Brian. You.
Here.
Okay. Bill, are you here yet? Not yet. Okay. Jen Guerrera. Great. Joseph Amador. Mia Moreno. Not here yet. Okay. Sarah Montemayor. Thank you. Dennis Torres, which actually is going to be Eddie. Eddie, you're here tonight?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yo. Okay. Let's see here. We're going down. Karen Pearson. Greg Garcia. Lee Delap.
Present.
Thank you. Darren Rose. Is Darren here yet? Okay. Mark Scott. Mark is going to be joining us online tonight, so he may be a little bit late. Nick Palladino.
President.
Thank you. Mark Kepler. Mark,
Present.
you're here.
Yeah, by the way,
Yay.
thank you everyone for indulging me. Hey, good news is we got it settled, so not a minute too soon.
Let's hope that's a trend, shall we?
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Scott Miller. Thank you. Alexander. Gail. I saw you. Wyatt.
Here.
Kay, are you here yet? Yes.
Yes.
You're here. Okay. Pastor Baisel. Am I saying that right? Baisel? Baisel. Okay. Dr. Crowell. Thank you. Dr. Diaz.
Here.
Veronica Garibay.
Here.
In the house. Mandip Johal.
Here.
Thank you. Pastor Joby Jones. Naaman Martinez.
Here.
Thank you. Evelyn Morales. Thank you. Cher.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Here.
Sure. I'm gonna get it right.
Here.
Give me another. David Rivas. I saw you earlier, David. Okay. And SB. Okay. So first item of business today is in front of you are the meeting minutes from our last meeting. So at the end of every meeting going forward, usually within 24 hours, it might be 48, you'll get a copy of the meeting minutes emailed to you. And what we're asking you to do is to take the time to read through that and make sure that it's accurate to the best of your recollection. So we want to send it to you early. And then at each of these additional meetings, we'd have an opportunity to make any adjustments or changes if something was wrong or someone was misquoted, or you think that something was missing. So I think most of you got a copy of this previously. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it. We can take a moment to have everybody go through it real quickly and take a look and see if anything's wrong. Yes, go ahead, Lee.
Yes, on the vision statement, I believe that I made it clear it was my view, and I think you acknowledged that was a draft one
Yes.
because we didn't get an opportunity really to see it and analyze it, and especially we're preliminary with multiple discussions on where we go. So that should be clarified in the minutes, I believe. We don't do that, that's how a draft becomes permanent.
It's definitely not permanent, and it was definitely, I believe, set up that way, and we've expressed that. In fact, that's one of the reasons, of course, that the board is not taking any action on that this week, because that's actually on our agenda for tonight to discuss, refine, and then get your feedback on that. If we can come to a conclusion, great, and if not, then moving on. Are there any other corrections or questions about the minutes? Veronica, did you have something?
Yeah, one correction, I think, well, one big comment is that I would urge whoever's taking notes to be consistent in how notes are being taken. And some of the notes, some groups are identified, and in others, it just says committee members. So just consistency in how that's taken. And then I believe the comments attributed to CCEJN were actually made by Simon, so those should be corrected
Okay.
in the notes, just feedback on how those are taken.
So, and a good point, because this was also brought up to us for some of the news media. One, a lot of people are listening to this, and I know that we can see all each other and see names. But when I call on you and you're giving a comment, it would be really helpful for you to say your name. They all have the list, but that way there isn't a mistake on committee member or wherever it is, because we know the agencies, right? So as an example, if I called on Veronica, you just, say Veronica from, doesn't have to be a diatribe, but just so we can know, okay? Is everybody cool with that? Okay. So with those corrections, can we get a motion to approve the minutes? These are fun. Anybody
make-
could just say,
I'll make a motion. Chuck from Kalinga.
okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
Nick Palladino, Prison Second Club, second.
Oh, we need another chair. Wendy, we are getting one more chair. She's on the end next to Alexander. All right, I have a second. All those in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're moving on. So speaking of vision and priorities, you may recall at the last meeting, we had sort of a, shall we call it a collaborative wordsmithing. So our process right now involves us taking outputs from this committee and then bringing that back for a group being called the facilitation / synergy committee. We also had an opportunity to discuss your ideas in an informal way with Mayor Dyer and members of the FCTA and FCOG boards. And one of the things they asked us to share is that they had some concerns about the length of the overall thing. And so there was some back and forth last week. So this was what came out, again, very, very draft of last week. And so the suggestions that we want to show you tonight are just that. It is up to you to make comments, craft, whatever. The thing I want to share with you is that this vision and the priorities that you identified, the priorities, by the way, just as a reminder, I think there were only 2 in opposition to the priorities. This one was approved by majority, but again, just in concept. But one of the things that was been asked to share is that we're trying to find something that is going to be clear and rememberable that relates to Measure C for everyone and is representative of the whole group. So these are 2 that we are simply asking you to take a look at. The first one, Measure C supports a reliable, safe, and connected infrastructure system that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely, regardless of transportation mode. The second alternative, again, these are based on what you gave us, is Measure C envisions safe, well-maintained roads and an equitable, connected, future-ready transportation system that advances job creation, community health, and equitable access for all. And so I'd like to just sort of open that up to the group. If you'd like to weigh in on that comment, ask a question, just raise your hand and we'll try to get as many folks weighing in on this as possible to move forward. But any reactions? What do you need? It's also in your agenda package, in the printout notes. You can look at it that if the type is small. Mark, anybody have any comments about these 2 alternatives that have been suggested? Yes, go right ahead. And remember, say your name and just so we know.
Nayamin Martinez, CCJ. I like the second version better. However, what I prefer from the first one is that the second one is limiting us to roads. And I think that the concept that we're trying to bring forward is a multi-system infrastructure for transportation, not only roads. But the second one for me is stronger because it has equitable and, that being a core also aspect that to me should have the big.
So let me ask you this, because it did come up in conversation. The original version of the revision was adding connected, future-ready, multimodal transportation system, because multimodal is normally how people refer to bike ped alternative. Would that do it for you, or do you have other thoughts?
I think that would do it for me.
Okay. Other comments, questions? I know, Lena, you had some concerns.
I think the second one is well encompassing. We got, like I said, the purpose of this is the vision now, the readiness of our transportation system now. We don't know what the future's gonna hold. We don't know. We need to prepare for it, but we need to focus on maintaining what we have now. And so the second one creates that. The businesses are gonna expand if they have ways to get their business in and out. The people are going to come to the area if they can get in and out. So I think the second vision statement is well encompassing of all that.
Okay, Lino, thank you very much. Other comments? Yes, Nick.
I tend to agree with the lady who spoke first about, I just like the fact that number one focuses only on will maintain roads. We need to have the multimodal aspect in. This is going to be either a 20 or 30 year. We need to get away from worshiping at the altar of the internal combustion engine. We need to support, options, giving people in the future a choice of other options. So if we change, the second option to get away from the focusing only on well-maintained streets and roads, I like the equitable, safe, connected, that's good, but we need to revise it to include a multimodal system.
Okay. So what we've now got a couple folks that seem to be weighing in, and folks that maybe weren't as happy with the last version. The second version with the addition of multimodal ahead of transportation, so ready multimodal transportation systems. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess less is more for me, and I'm going to stand up for poor little number one there. I think that encompasses everything. We understand that roads is going to be a priority, but you could say regardless of transportation mode is the same thing as saying multimodal. So I think one is succinct, it captures it. I would think one is preferred.
Well, just off the top here, just to see where we're at. Let me see a quick show of hands for those that prefer option one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Online, Eddie, Brian, Karen. Are you ones or twos? Karen, you can speak up. I see your hand up.
Oh, I thought you were asking for one.
Oh,
You were voting on number one. I'm sorry. I would vote for number one. Number two is just a bunch of gobbledygook.
let's try to refrain from classic. Let's try to keep it clean, folks, as long as we possibly can. Evening's still young. Yes, Gail.
Gail Miller, having written many environmental documents in my career, along with other reports and working on RTPs, less is more, keeping it succinct. Infrastructure is all encompassing. We don't have to spell all that out. It'll come to me like with the beginning of an environmental doc, it's just fluff.
Okay. So let me ask another question just for a count. How many of you prefer option two? Option two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a tweener, 8 over here. Anybody else? 9. So that's the kind of night it's going to be. All right, well, let me put this a different way. Tell you what, Mark, why don't you make the best case that you can for option one, and you have a few minutes to do that, and then we'll have one of the folks on option two make their best case, and we'll pull it again and see how we come up.
Thanks. And again, I want to thank everyone for indulging me and meeting a little late today. I know it's probably an inconvenience for some folks, so thank you for doing that. Before I do that, I want to mention something kind of briefly, and probably Kendall knows this, other of you may not, but I'm doing some, reading about facilitation and whatnot, and there's something that researchers call the groan zone. And that's when you kind of, you all have your divergent interests, and then you start looking at each other and saying, I don't know if I agree with this person. I don't know if we can reach agreement. And the point of the groan zone is you are now entering the groan zone. There's going to be disagreement. You have to be comfortable with that disagreement. And what I just would urge you to do is a few things. Number one is always assume the best of people who are making proposals. Their intent, whether we agree or disagree, all our intent is the same, trying to make the community a better place. So approach it that way. The second thing is try to understand people that you don't agree with. Ask questions. And as we work through this groan zone, we get to convergence. We finally see, oh, there's some overlapping interests here. We can agree on some things. So I just would encourage you to be comfortable with the discomfort and disagreement as we go through the process. I think that's important to note. I don't think I could have said it better than I said it originally, and that is shorter is better, succinct, it's to the point, it's all encompassing. It covers multimodal as far as I'm concerned. It says regardless of transportation mode, that covers it for me. I also, frankly, honestly, we're gonna have a lot bigger issues down the line. Let's not sweat the details on some just general comment, would be my thing. There'll be
Okay.
bigger fish to fry down the line, but anyway. All right, thank you.
Let me ask it a different way. Would anybody be drastically disappointed or opposed if we went with option number one? Okay, so two are definites. Anybody else online? So 2 out of 32. Oh, actually, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I cannot agree with option one if we don't incorporate the term equity or equitable. That's a bottom line for me. Because if we see the transportation system that we have right now, it's the opposite of that. And if we don't include it there in our mission, then we're failing. That's
So let
how
me
I
ask
feel.
you this, if we added on number one, Measure C supports a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure, and actually put that word back in on that, would that suffice? Okay, for you. Okay, how about for you over here, Lee?
Well, generally I agree with less is better, but there's nothing like telling people what you're really doing. Most of the measure is for roads and it's transportation. And not everybody that reads this statement is in here agreeing on what we all think we understand. So there's nothing like mentioning roads in the actual statement. That is what we're doing.
Okay. Other thoughts? Alexander, you had your hand up? Yeah, did you want to weigh something on that? Don't forget to turn your mic on.
For me, just thinking of the future, remember this is a 20 to 30 years is a long time. You don't know what's going to come out 30 years down the line. So making sure that we have the word future or any sort of thought that we're gonna like this is an ever evolving, like the tax is going to be going to projects that are going to be going down 25 years from now is, I think, important to me. But besides
Yeah.
equitable, those two are very important.
Okay. Dr. Crowell?
That was what I was going to say is I think it's important considering how long this measure is going to be in place. And Fresno County is a very changing region. The future ready aspect needs to be in there in addition to equitable.
Okay. Let me ask you this. We have a tremendous amount of material to go through, and we're going to be talking about some of the priorities, which may help inform some of this thing. Go ahead, Wyatt. Yeah, I'm going to ask if you would be interested in tabling this until we get to the Mentimeter portion, and we can actually take a vote on it, and we'll have, good feedback at that point. Because I think some of the information you're going to get and some of the discussion you're going to have about possible allocations may help inform this, right? Because you're trying to figure out what the vision's going to be, and however you do these allocations, it's going to have a big chunk on that. Go ahead, Veronica. Yeah.
I think it's helpful to set out the vision, and I think that there's a I agree with Mark and Lee about succinct and very clear about like the everyday voter and everyday Fresno County resident can be like, this is what we're doing and this is where we're going, that is helpful. I also agree that the word equity was brought up a lot in this and why we ended up with that monster of a paragraph last week or 2 weeks ago. So I'm a tweener, I would recommend something as simple that brings both together, and it's one sentence, and it's Measure C envisions a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure and transportation system that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely, regardless of mode, and that's it. Infrastructure gets at roads,
Infrastructure
streets,
goes down, and we talked, Wyatt?
anyway.
So I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but I think the issue is one of them actually says roads, the other doesn't. There's some issue overlying. One of them says equity, the other doesn't. There seems to be issue when it comes to that. I think it's pretty simple to change the top one and make it feasible for everybody. It just basically says Measure C supports reliable roads to create safe and equitable connected infrastructure systems that enable all residents to travel efficiently. I mean, it doesn't seem pretty simple. I mean,
Okay.
not a reliable in all these things, but reliable roads, because realistically, we're all talking about, we all know it's got to be roads, right? And I don't know where we're getting off track with that, because it already sounds like it's happening already, first thing with some of the first comments. But I think by putting those both in there like that, I think the roads are creating the rest of this. And this first statement doesn't say that. And the second one doesn't really say it either, but I think
So I
that's
want to make sure I've got the edit correct. Measure C supports
reliable.
reliable roads, strike the A, and is safe
To create safe
To
and
create-
equitable connected infrastructure systems.
to
that-
create, don't write
Yeah.
that fast.
Right.
To create safe
Equitable.
and equitable
Connected
connected
infrastructure
infrastructure
systems.
system
Yep.
that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely regardless of mode.
Yep.
Does that capture the two of you, Veronica and Wyatt?
I think it's a different thing, and I have a suggestion.
Okay. Go ahead.
My suggestion on the table was Measure C envisions a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure and transportation system that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely regardless of mode. What we're trying to build here isn't just roads. It's a system that gets people to where they need to go, whether they're on the road, they're on a bike, they're walking, or they're taking transit. It's a system that we're talking about. That's the future component, not just roads to get to somewhere. I see it as much broader than that.
What is
Yeah.
the system?
So the question, and I think one thing that just to point out is that the overwhelming in all the data we're seeing is, roads are the top of mind for all audiences. It's not the only thing. It's not the only
Kendall,
piece.
can I-
Yeah. Go ahead, Brooke.
So we're 30 minutes in and we're still trying to get a mission statement together, whether we're roads or whether we're equitable or whether we're going to be, these different things. And I mean, I think what the real rubber is that people want to know what's the percentages, right? Because that's where it's going to get to. How much is going to go to roads? How much is going to go to buses? How much is going to go to trails? And what's the split? What's the split going out to Mendota, to my neighbor next to me? What's the split, right? Are they going to get a fair shake? Are they not going to get a fair shake? Is it going to be roads? Is it going to be miles? Or is it going to be population? Or what's that percentage of how it's going to go back and forth? But if we get stuck on this for an hour,
We're not going to get stuck on this for an
well,
hour.
we're 30 minutes in.
We've had other stuff too. We're gonna wrap this up and move on, but the question is back on the table. Do you have, between the two, do you have a preference on the first one or the second one? Just out of curiosity?
The second one, so if we break it down, we're gonna take an extra couple minutes here. If you break it down, what in the world does Measure C have to do with community health? You tell me. What does it have to do with job creation?
Well,
We're not-
apologies,
we're not
we're in a
crea-
group meeting, but people
But
were
hold
talking
on a
about
second.
health.
Hold on a second. You asked me my opinion. Let me tell you. So what does it have to do with job creation? Are we going to create jobs? Well, we're going to create some, but they're going to be road work jobs, which are going to be probably under Wyatt's supervision. Part of it's going to probably go under Chuck. Some of it's going to go under Darren's people at BIA. But equitable access? Nope. What does that even mean? We already have laws in place for ADA components. What does equitable access mean? I don't know what that means. And I build roads. So-
Appreciated. Mark, go ahead.
Don't want to wordsmith this, but the problem with using roads is, for example, the airport's included in Measure C. So if you use the word infrastructure, that captures all of it. We all understand, I think we're getting caught up in this a little bit too much.
Yeah.
We all, I think there's agreement that the majority, the vast majority of the money is going to go toward roads. We get that. I think there's some people that think that if they don't put roads right in there, that somehow roads is going to get bypassed. No one is saying that. And the polling doesn't say that. So I guess take a chill pill, relax. Roads are going to be a priority. But I think a more all-encompassing word like infrastructure covers everything.
Okay, to be honest, we were very close on the other piece. So I want to just go back to Veronica for a second here, where I can type it. Measure C supports reliable roads and a safe, equitable, connected.
No, that's
So-
not what I said. That was Wyatt's.
Yeah. Okay. Well, give me yours, and then we'll roadsmith on the other.
Mine was Measure C envisions a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure and transportation system that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely regardless of mode. It's a merging of the two.
Okay. So for you, you're taking roads out in favor of an infrastructure system which is inclusive of roads, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah.
This thought occurred to me, about a week or so ago on this mode situation. To some extent, streets and roads, really, it's not a mode. The mode is actually, the single occupant vehicle, light trucks, 18-wheelers. Those things use streets and roads. Transit uses
Right.
streets and roads. Bicycles use streets and roads. Pedestrians, actually, they're adjacent to streets and roads. So to a certain extent, thinking of streets and roads as a mode is misleading. Because it actually, the mode is not streets and roads. You have several modes. Bicycles use streets and roads, transit use streets and roads, single occupant vehicles use streets and roads. Emergency responders use streets and
Right.
roads. 18-wheelers use streets and roads. That's the reason why everybody's interested in streets and roads. So thinking about streets and roads as a mode, to a certain extent, is misleading.
So I think we're going back over materials that we talked about in the last meeting and in general. So I think where we're really at here is whether or not we include roads as a specific, or whether or not we just leave it as a transportation system that's inclusive of roads. I mean, that's how I'm hearing it right now. The question is, if we do it without the word road, but leave infrastructure in, and I'm just suggesting that as we have our conversation later in the evening and start doing allocations by category, we may see things coming up a little bit differently. And that's why I was suggesting perhaps we can get through that discussion and then come back to this for a refinement. And that would give us an opportunity to see where people's thoughts are. Are we okay with that? Okay. I'm going to move along past this so that we can come back to it, and we will be coming back to that to have another discussion. I want to invite Dr. Pacheco Warner up, my partner in crime. I did want to go through a couple things. We are not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on this right now because a lot of this is information you already have, but I want to give you the kind of headlines, and you do have printouts in your packages. One thing that I want to be very clear about is that we've been combining efforts in terms of the outreach and engagement. This is a heat map of all of the zip codes in Fresno County. And this first slide shows all of the engagement that was handled by the FCOG, Fresno Council of Governments team, and the sundry consultants that are working on that. This shows the outreach efforts that were conducted by the Tea for All group. And you'll see also quite a lot throughout the county. And when you see this map, this is everybody all together. So when we look at in the upper left-hand side there, you can see the really dense areas. That's a lot of downtown Fresno, Clovis area, and other pieces. These maps are continuing to be updated so that people can see where the outreach and engagement is taking place. and the consistencies of comments depending on where you are. There are some differences between our rural areas and our urban areas, but we're going to start with just the overall. This is all in your package, but there's been a tremendous amount of engagement that has been taken in. There's a lot of consistencies, but I want everyone to understand this is all just based on the engagement and on the outreach. We have not done polling for this potential measure at this point, at this time, although I'll be sharing some information about 2024 polling that was done last summer. But I want to start with Dr. Pacheco Warner going through her pieces, and then we'll have 4 or 5 on that, and we'll talk about the priorities that came out of that. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. For those that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Dr. Tanya Pacheco Warner, and I am the Executive Director of the Central Valley Health Policy Institute at Fresno State. And we were hired to help analyze and help collect some of this data around community engagement in a transportation measure, vision, and priorities. So let me tell you about how this research process has evolved. Our approach was actually an iterative process where we came in the first phase with a very general survey, but a lot of qualitative data that really focused on hearing people and their vision around a transportation system in the county, which investments they were most worried about, and what they wanted to see come as in terms of transportation in their community that was not currently present. And then the second phase, we asked people based on their own words, how they described what they wanted. We asked them to help us prioritize more in depth and to speak to their preferences for how they wanted to see projects come online in their communities and in the county as a whole. Where we are now in phase 3, we are asking a series of questions, but as it relates to this iterative process, we are asking people, okay, we heard from you phase 1, we heard from you in phase 2, here's what we came up with in terms of these values that you have around how you want investments to happen. Is this the approach that you want? And then in terms of spending, how do you want the approach around spending to happen? So that's that. In terms of this piece, you'll see that that when we ask people around, again, thinking about their investment values, where they wanted to see money, definitely the priority in terms of investment is around road, highway, and street projects, followed by public transportation, sidewalk projects, and then active transportation. I do want to emphasize that in terms of how these percentages are to be interpreted, this is in terms of how people value these investments. So not directly apples to oranges around some of the other percentages that you've seen or will see. This is definitely, you should think about this in terms of proportionality of where people want their investments to go. But what do people mean when they say road, highway, street projects? We really got to hear a lot about what people meant from that. And really, this quote really sums it up. I would like to get around by getting the roads and potholes fixed so people can get around in a car and get in and out of my neighborhood. So this was really around fixing and maintaining in terms of their assets. I do want to emphasize that neighborhood streets and streets near schools, parks, and community centers are distinguishable because many communities do not have these assets in their own neighborhoods. We might take for granted that in your neighborhood there might be a park. That's not a for granted to everywhere in the county. So people want to be able to get to assets whether or not they're in their own neighborhoods, and they want investments in their own neighborhoods as well. So in terms of this piece in roads, I really also want to emphasize that there is you'll see the context on the right side when we talk about these categories more in depth. And that just means we got insight as to what people want to be connected to, what safety aspects they want to be looking towards. And really in every phase, they've spoken around accessibility. So we bring insight on that. Next, please. We really did want to see in terms of coming online, what kind of projects you want to see in your own community. And when we asked people to rank this, it really was about repairing and maintaining streets in their community first and foremost. Rural roads was next. And I do have to emphasize that our respondents were both urban and rural, and they also saw, regardless, they saw this fixing of the entire system as a priority. And lastly was around access to freeways and highways. So really in terms of wanting to prioritize what's near them and how they get to the assets that they care about within their own communities. Public transportation, when we think about this one, it is very important to note that people often felt like they didn't have any and wanted, and where they didn't have any, they wanted some. Where they did have some, they wanted more and more often. And we actually, when we asked people why they didn't use public transportation, they actually came up with mostly systemic barriers as to why. It was, yes, some people definitely said, I just prefer a car, but a lot of people, the majority said, it doesn't come where I need to go, it doesn't go where I need to go, it doesn't come late at night or early when I need it, it doesn't come as often as I need it. So it really speaks around wanting to get rid of those systemic barriers. And and so that we heard for people, obviously lower cost for residents and more time slots availability as kind of the top line. We had a lot of questions that were relating to this broader concept of connectivity. So we really did ask people, what do you want to be connected to? Are you talking about like, and how do you want to get there? And so it really is important to note that it wasn't just around highways, and in fact, that was sort of the lowest priority. It really is centering, regional connectivity for them is centering what's in their own neighborhood. It's centering the safety, and really one person that we heard from in the counties, in the broader county, we asked people, what would you want people that are leaders in your community to know? Somebody said, city and county leaders need to know that many people in rural areas do not have cars. We need public transportation for our children to get to college, for seniors to shop and go to medical appointments, and for young workers to get to jobs. And so that was where a lot of this regional connectivity concept was going. Next slide, please. And then finally, when we asked a lot about sidewalks because that came up a lot. And again, when we talk about sidewalks, because we heard it from people, they didn't just want sidewalks to nowhere. They didn't want a bunch of new sidewalks. They wanted sidewalks for old neighborhoods, for existing neighborhoods. They wanted them repaired, and they also wanted to be connected because there are many places, even in urban areas in our county, where people reported, look, there is a sidewalk, but then it cuts off, and then we have to walk on a dirt path to get my kid to school. Why isn't there just a sidewalk the whole way through from my neighborhood to my kid's school? So that's the kind of project that they really focused on and wanting more of. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the first part of it. I'm going to go through some other pieces. And then one of the things that this group also asked for was an update on the pavement condition costs. In other words, how much of an investment in local roads would be required to actually improve pavement condition index. So I'm going to roll through these updates for you. We'll hear from Paul and from Robert briefly, and then we'll start the discussion on how this might come out. As you know, Fresno Council of Governments did an online survey. This has been open since April. Right now, we're a little bit over 970, almost to 1,000 on the completes. This is basically asking people if they were going to spend money on Measure C, how they would allocate it. It is not statistically valid. Okay, this is just people that went on the website and did that. The same question was asked in a lot of our workshops, and so we're still compiling that because we're not done. But on the surface, 46% went with with local streets and roads, meaning in the neighborhoods, just as Dr. Pacheco was talking about. About 19% were allocated to bike, pedestrian, and safe routes to schools, 18% to transit. You can see regional projects and other programs. The key takeaways, every place we went, every single area is all about road conditions and sidewalk gaps. So the two things that were brought up most often from folks. So we're not talking necessarily about, sidewalks in the middle of nowhere, but we did a workshop in one of the areas of Fresno. It's like there's sidewalk on one side of the street, there's no sidewalk on the other side of the street. So it's in those sort of existing neighborhoods, but certainly road conditions was universal, and traffic calming, which means opportunities for agencies to do improvements in their local communities, whether that's safe routes to schools or whatnot, to make sure that they are slowing down traffic in high speed or areas around schools. Lighting, that's a safety issue. Reflective markings, this came up a lot too. And again, these are all part of things that would be part of road services. There was definitely questions or people that are asking about expanded bus service and looking at accessibility. And then looking also at other cities, why couldn't they do it and we can't kind of situation. One of the challenges, which I think those of you were here earlier, our transit providers did talk about ridership levels, as you may recall, and the challenges of funding ridership and being able to maintain that percentage of fare box. But that doesn't stop people from needing it or wanting it to be in there. The other thing to keep in mind, North versus South Fresno. So in the north and more urban areas, we did see people wanting more investment in the urban infrastructure, the local streets and roads in those areas. When we get into the rural areas, they have more challenges with sort of those connecting roadways that are also getting them to other communities and into Fresno. That's pretty consistent. It's also worth noting that the population centers, Clovis, Fresno, the downtown metro, that's where most of the population is, and that's where most of the population kind of comes up with these pieces. Doesn't mean they don't still want buses and other things, but just something to keep in mind in that whole piece. Also, we heard across the board ideas for parks, trails, other types of things that some of which, like splash pads, aren't necessarily going to come up in a transportation measure, but it doesn't stop people from putting them in there. Also having pieces with that. Again, tree planting, shade structures, urban greening, also things looking at alley maintenance, really interesting to me. We heard that in Kerman, we heard it in Kingsburg. Some of our communities have alleys, and thus far they weren't kind of included in the definition of a local road. So it's important. Language will matter. That's something we'll get into later when we talk about implementing guidelines. Also questions about general distrust. Where did my money go? That's pretty universal. And more requests for outreach and education. I'm only mentioning this because some of you may recall the vast number of people didn't know where the money went in their own community. And a lot of people also don't know where Measure C money goes every year. And so it's people asking, is there a way we can work that in? And the answer is yes. Now, the T for All had a question or a pot of money for admin that was 6%. I just want to remind you all that by law, it cannot exceed 1.5%. So people do want this information, but we definitely have to fit it within the budget. So just as a reminder on the focus groups, y'all have heard this before, but some of the T for All folks have not. Focus groups were held. We had 7 of them. This is how those 7 groups, they were made up of North County, South County, East and West, urban. We did 2 Spanish language and 1 senior. And this is just the snapshot of them. The majority were looking for local streets and roads and regional projects. This is how they would have done the percentages. And you can see they're a little bit different, but consistently with the roads. These were also provided in your binders, the full memo and additional information on that. So if you want to look at those later, please feel free. And then this is probably the biggest one before I turn it over to Paul. In 2024, the Fresno Council of Governments did conduct a statistically valid survey of all county residents, and the margin of error is about 3%, which means what comes out of this is fairly accurate, and also have more than fairly, it's very accurate. And it did have a mix of all the different pieces. The number one thing across the board, and this was looking at the 2024 to 2020, and these numbers all went up last summer. We are going to poll again, but I just want you to be aware that in order, the priorities for folks in the county were repairing potholes, maintaining streets, making roads and intersections safer. That applies to both rural and urban, by the way. Those left-hand turns, if you've ever done it in some of the rural areas, that can be problematic. Reducing traffic congestion, and maintain your increasing pedestrian sidewalks and walkways. The next piece of that farther down was improving bus service, which actually went down between 2020 and 2024. Some of that can be attributed to COVID and so many folks that were not really thrilled about that at that point. Then there's also questions about hiking and other things. This is all part of your package. But again, when they look at the priorities, which are 8 out of 10, the highest priorities, 91% put potholes, maintaining streets as the number one piece, followed by the roads, traffic congestion, etc. And then the same kind of things go down to buses and whatnot. This entire report, and along with all these other things, will be posted once again on the steering committee website. So you'll have an opportunity to go back and look at it later and dive into the data. But I think what you're seeing consistently in all the things we're talking about is sort of that overreaching theme of roads that do accommodate bikes and walking and buses and all these other things, as well as the need to have a balance in terms of the investment packages going forward. With that, I'm going to switch it over to Paul. Yes, go ahead, Lee.
Yes, unless I was asleep, when we talked about North versus South Fresno and perception, et cetera, and where the population is, it sounded to me like we neglected the subject of rural neglect.
No, that's actually one of the full pulls out. Let me pull that back so you can see it. It's one of the things that came up repeatedly, that rural neglect outlying communities, specifically areas that might be in the unincorporated area. But we do have a couple of incorporated cities that also have some challenges with their local road systems, you know, specifically, you know, Huron, Orange Cove, parts of Parlier. So all of them have similar issues in terms of, you know, except the challenge, which we'll be talking about next month, also relates to the allocation formulas, you know, how you divvy up the money. But yes, those are definitely things that happen countywide. So it is definitely part of the findings that were out there. Okay, Paul, I want to remind everybody what we talked about last month was really looking at the pavement condition. And then the question that was asked of staff is to come back with some updated numbers. And with that, Paul, take it away. This is Paul Herman, by the way, for those of you that don't
I'll introduce myself. Thanks, Kendall. Paul Herman, Deputy Director here at Fresno COG. And today I'll go through an update to our revenue forecasts and the associated PCI analysis that comes with that forecast. So at our July 10th meeting of the steering committee, COG staff, along with our pavement management consultant NCE, presented an initial pavement condition index PCI analysis and received feedback from this committee that additional analysis was needed to show scenarios that increase the countywide PCI to a good condition, which is denoted at 70 PCI. This is the generally accepted target PCI that transportation agencies use throughout the country when analyzing pavement conditions. I believe the scenarios we showed topped out at around 65 PCI, and there's reasons for it, which I'll elaborate here. When we compared our most recent PCI analysis to the one that was conducted 4 years prior in 2021, staff found some key baseline assumptions were different. The most fundamental of which was that the annual growth rate assumed in the 2021 analysis used a 3.5% annual growth rate, which was a half percentage point above the 3% growth rate that was used in the analysis on July 10th. Due to the compounding exponential nature of annual growth rates over an extended period of time, like 30 years, this translates into a significant difference in the amount of available revenue. So staff evaluated the current measure's actual revenue collection between 2007 and 2024. That's the graph here on your screen. And in this analysis, looking at historical receipts of Measure C revenue, we saw a 4.6% annual growth rate. Now, some years it went down, some years it jumped up quite significantly. I believe during the Great Recession, we saw a decrease of about 12% year over year. But during COVID and in the post-pandemic era, we saw increases of almost 20% year over year. So when you average out all of these percentages, we come up to a 4.6 annual growth rate over that time. So since the 2021 PCI analysis, we've also seen in the US economy significant inflation at historic levels in some cases, and that was much higher than 3%. So there's some things that are occurring in the analysis that make it challenging to land on a growth rate that we think is reasonable for a revenue forecast over 20 or 30 years. But we're doing our best attempt here. So if you go to the next slide. When looking at all of the factors that were presented, COG is revising our Measure C revenue forecast to an annual growth rate of 4%, with a total 30-year revenue forecast of $7.25 billion without interest. We will assume some interest. The money that is received does get settled into interest-bearing accounts, but we are going to wait until we receive this last fiscal year's tax receipts that ended on June 30th before we make an official determination on exactly what that interest-bearing account assumption will be, roughly around 1%. So we expect that potentially this number will go to $7.3 billion. The graph is off your screen.
Brenda, you need to give it back to me.
Sorry about that. So when we compare this, sorry, real quick, lost my trait here. We anticipate, like I said, receiving these numbers in the next couple of weeks on the 2024-25 fiscal year tax receipts. And at that point, we'll give the final estimation. But again, about $7.3 billion is where we are likely to land. 4 years ago, when we did this analysis for the PCI, we had a 30-year estimate of $6.83 billion. So you'll see it has increased about $400 or $500 million. And that really is due to the amount of inflation we've seen since that last analysis had taken place. If you go to the next slide. So this is the rerun of the analysis based off the new forecasts. With this updated revenue forecast, staff requested NCE to rerun the PCI analysis, and the results show that the 60% and 70% Measure C revenue scenarios reached the 70 PCI countywide average, which is an improvement over today's current 65 countywide PCI average. Compared to the analysis that was conducted 4 years ago, which showed a need for 50% of all Measure C revenues to be allocated to reach the same threshold, we've seen a 10% increase in the amount of total Measure C revenue needed to bring the countywide PCI to a good condition. Much of this increase can be attributed to the historic rise in inflation over the last 4 years, which has considerably increased the cost of road maintenance activities throughout the country. The 60% revenue scenario takes 4 years longer than the 70% scenario to reach a 70 PCI countywide. So in 2037, it is reached in the 70% scenario, and in 2041, it is reached in the 60% scenario. The major difference between the 50 and 60% scenarios are that the 60% scenario can reduce the built-up maintenance backlog, while the 50% scenario essentially treads water and does not meaningfully reduce this backlog. And without Measure C, the countywide PCI average drops to 48 at mid-century, a 17-point reduction compared to today's countywide average. And this trend will continue downwards without a source of local transportation funds. And that is my presentation.
So before we get too excited about those numbers, I know that Robert's going to give you just a brief update on other funding sources, and then I'm sure there's going to be some questions. I'm positive there's going to be some questions about that. So Robert, why don't you go ahead and explain the funding pipeline for state and federal funds?
Yes, thank you. Robert Phipps, Executive Director, Fresno Council of Governments. So we have talked quite a bit about the fact that a big part of the secret sauce of Measure C historically has been not as much in what it itself raises, but in what it's able to leverage over the course of 40 years now of its history or nearly 40 years. And those leveraged funds typically are in the form of state and federal funding streams, right, that we're talking about, and serving primarily serving as matching funds, in some cases front-loading projects with early design, design, engineering, in some cases right-of-way acquisition, and then construction coming from the federal or state sources at the end of the process, because so often the federal and state governments like to see shovel-ready projects. And so this is simply a quick overview of the kinds of funding sources that the measure often leverages. Not a completely exhaustive list, but a relatively exhaustive one. So we start in alphabetical order with the Active Transportation Program. This is a state program that includes federal dollars, primarily intended for bike and ped projects. It is both a formula and what we call a discretionary or competitive program. There's two different aspects to it. We get both. So again, for competitive projects, these are typically applied for at the jurisdictional level. The jurisdictions apply individually for these projects, either directly to the state or federal governments, or sometimes directly through Fresno Council of Governments. In the case of ATP, they can apply to both the state and the regional agency, Fresno COG. The Build Grant, that is again that has appeared in many forms on the federal side. Build, also known as Infra. Before that, what was it? I can't remember some of the earlier iterations off the top of my head.
Tiger.
Well, there's Tiger. Yeah, I think that's actually a different grant. Raise, yeah. There we go. And so different administrations have named it different things, but again, in this case, a multimodal competitive grant at the federal level, typically applied for at the jurisdictional level. The next one, congestion mitigation and air quality improvement, multimodal, but with the intention of improving air quality. So this one specifically, for example, prohibits widening projects. So again, strings that are attached to typically to each one of these funding streams. That one is a formula allocation to the region, but then at our level, we hold a competitive process for that funding. The jurisdictions apply through Fresno COG for that funding. FTA funding, in this case, the first one is 5307, which is the urbanized transit. So this is a formula, but is required a 20% match. And on each of these, you can see what the match or recommended match is. And again, that's typically where Measure C will become involved, right, is in terms of providing a match, or in some cases an overmatch, to make the application more attractive. Next slide. FTA 5310, that is the Enhanced Mobility Program, also federal. The HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program, regional roads as a eligible expenditure, another competitive grant. The Infra Grant, which focuses on freight, again, regional roads and freight rail, also a competitive grant at the federal level that is applied directly from the jurisdictions to the federal government. The Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG, in conjunction with CMAQ, that comes through our office. That one is probably one of the, has the fewest strings attached to it. Again, it is formula to the region, but then at the regional level, we hold a competition. The grants come into our office and are allocated. In fact, that's going to happen for the next cycle for both STBG and CMAQ tomorrow night. And again, 20% match for that. FTA New Starts transit program, competitive, with also a 20% match for new transit programs. Next slide. Okay, so that kind of covers the federal, some of the major federal programs, although again, not exhaustive, but those are some of the major ones. On the state side, you see the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program. We call it the ITIP. Again, regional roads and intercity rail are eligible projects. Competitive, this funding is directed by Caltrans. Typically, this is their share of what's known as the State Transportation Improvement Program. The LPP, Local Partnership Program, this is the one that Kendall has referred to in the past. This is exclusive to self-help counties like Fresno that have self-help measures such as Measure C. And then the competitive version of that same program. Both of those are SB1 funded programs through the state. Local Transportation Funds, LTF, part of the Transportation Development Act. Also state that is part of the general sales tax, not specifically to the fuel tax. The LTF Article 3, which is a portion of the local transportation funds dedicated to bike and pedestrian, also formula. Next slide. Section 190 grade separation programs, just what it sounds like for grade separations, road and rail, a competitive program. The Solutions for Congested Corridors, another SB1 program, multimodal, also a competitive program, but with no match specifically required, but recommended. The SHOP program, State Highway Operations and Protection Program. This is another program that Caltrans controls, and it is specifically for road maintenance and operations. It does not include any widening projects. And this is also competitive and based on district, Caltrans district. The TIRSIP program, the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, a competitive program that heretofore has typically focused on capital projects as opposed to operations funding. And then the most recently, the TIRSIP, what we call the SB 125. This was an infusion, a special state infusion of TIRSIP that could go toward operations if a region chose to, and transit operators chose to do that. In Fresno, because of Measure C, we were able to forego asking for operational funding, and instead our SB 125 funding is all going into capital acquisitions and specifically electric buses. Next slide, please. State Transit Assistance, the STA, this is another portion of the Transportation Development Act along with the LTF, the Local Transportation Fund. Also, again, specifically for transit, cannot be used for roads. I mentioned earlier the STIP, the ITIP also being part of the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, again, multimodal and competitive. We do receive, although we do receive a formula share of that for every 2 years in a cycle based on population. 75% of the STIP is controlled at the regional level. Again, Caltrans with the ITIP controls the other 25%. And then the last one, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, or TCEP, again, another SB1 funded program specifically aimed at freight corridors and is a competitive program with a 10% local match minimum. And I think that should wrap it up, right? Yep. So that is just a listing of all of the, not all, but many of the grant programs and other funding streams that Measure C helps to leverage.
So I want to point out, because I know that Lee was talking about this as well, but we have talked about this previously. The funds that have been collected for SB1, those are gas tax funds that you pay at the pump. Those funds have been steadily going down in the last several years. Some of that's due to electric vehicles, some of it's due to, less driving, but the forecasts are that those funds will continue to be reduced, which means that the reliance on Measure C funds will continue to be increased, the need to have those funds out there. Lee, you want to pop in, then Mark will take your comment.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm sorry? Yep. Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that that was covered in the town hall last week from Lori Wilson had a meeting with regard, she's the assembly chairperson of the transportation committee, and they mentioned soft revenue from the state side. So I'm assuming it would impact all of these programs, or maybe just some, I'm not sure.
In so much at the majority of them probably because many on the state side, because many of them do come from SB1, which is the fuel tax. Yes.
Mark?
Yeah, I think that any of us have been paying attention to state budgets realize that the state isn't going to just accept the fact that they're losing money. They will come up with another way to have a revenue neutral approach. So as EVs become more popular, you're going to probably see a shifting of taxes away from gas tax toward a vehicle miles travel tax or an EV fee. The state isn't just going to let that money go away. So I think realistically, to say it's going to go down and we have to rely more and more on Measure C, I think is a misnomer. I think the state's going to feel in some way to figure it
You're
out.
absolutely correct, but the legislation that's in place right now, just so you know, we're probably, 5 to 10 years off because it'll happen eventually. I agree with you. But in the 5 to 10 year horizon, it's probably unlikely at this point, based on what the legislators are saying for Gus Berry and others.
I'd respectfully disagree. I think when they see the revenue going
All right,
down, they're going
okay.
to do something about it.
I'll breeze that. Go ahead, Veronica.
I have a couple questions, but I agree with Mark that it will be replaced and it'll be sooner than 5 years from now. There are actually active conversations around what to replace it with in both the legislature and at the state agency level now, with several working groups putting forward legislative proposals, which I understand also includes labor and other groups. So that's happening really quickly if folks haven't been paying attention to that. But I have while we're on the funding side, does the analysis include both on the federal and the state side, the projected budget deficits and how that impacts several of the programs outside of SB1? Some of the competitive grant programs at the state level have been reduced in the last couple of years, ATP being one of them, and other potential programs. Obviously, everybody knows that there's a big cap and trade negotiation underway that also impacts the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that pays for programs like the TIRCP and the LCTOP projects that fund what we're talking about. And then at the federal level, do you have an analysis of the impacts of the reconciliation bill on the Infrastructure Jobs Act and what we can expect in the upcoming negotiations for a new transportation bill that will need to be negotiated at some point by Congress, and what we expect to see from that? And then I have a couple of other questions on the presentation that Paul had, but do you want me to hold on those?
No, go ahead, ask the question.
Okay, on the PCI analysis, does that include, thank you, that chart, does that only analyze PCI based on Measure C revenues, or does it take into account other sources of revenue that cities and counties and regional, the COG receives for local streets and roads? And does it include an analysis for streets and roads based on, there are a couple cities that have a roads and street tax already on their own, like separately. Are all those sources of revenue accounted for in what the level would be? Or is it, the chart just seems to imply that it's just looking at Measure C?
Yeah, so there is other revenue streams accounted for. The percentages are just the Measure C portion, but the gas tax, that's, local agencies see that it passes through directly. That's incorporated as well. Also, so that's the SB1 funds. And then the STBG also, there's a assumption of some of that funding that would be allocated toward the local streets and roads. And so it's really a combination of Measure C, SB1 gas tax, and STBG.
Does it include the local tax measures that some of the jurisdictions have?
I need to check. I'm not 100% sure, so I'll find out for you if that is included. But I know the three main revenue sources are SB1 gas tax, STBG, and Measure C.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions related to any of those presentations?
Well, just to answer Veronica's
Robert.
question, on the sources, the answer essentially is no, because the presentation that I gave was simply listing the categories of other funding streams. So it doesn't attempt to address the state of those individual sources, right? Because you're absolutely right. As state and federal budgets are continually in flux, and as administrations change, policy priorities change, these things rise and fall with those kinds of events. And so all we were attempting to do was to identify some of the major state and funding sources that Measure C helps to match.
Thank you for that. I was raising it because from sort of our analysis of state and federal funding, we're starting to see some trends of where resources for which type of programs or funding programs are either going away or being deprioritized depending on the winds of the political environment, but also sort of the ending of the need to renegotiate a new transportation package at a federal level. For context, the federal level, the feds fund about a fourth of California's state transportation budget. So there is a big impact in California coming from that. And then given the state budget issues, we've seen a decrease over time for some of the projects that we've heard as priorities at the community level. So it would be helpful to see some of the trends, if you have any, that we can see, because that would also help us think about sort of where Measure C can help fill in some of the gaps.
Okay, other questions, comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Brooke.
just want to get it.
Let me get
oh,
Brooke
sorry.
first, because Mark, you.
So, with regards to that schedule and piggybacking on what Veronica said, if they're going to reduce roads and the money's going towards roads and Measure C is diminishing here, wouldn't that make more sense to be putting more money, uploading more money into roads, because the federal government is taking away roads and the state government is taking away road money? They're not taking away trail money.
They
They're
are
not
actually.
taking away. Well,
It's
they're-
active transportation,
but-
public.
Well, I
active travel.
understand it, but the percentages, if it's 15% trail and 85% roads, 85% of it's going away from roads. So the majority of the money that's getting reduced is roads. So in this committee, I would hope that we would really focus on pumping that up, knowing that exactly what she just said, that it's diminishing on the Fed and the state side, and with SB1 being either going away or getting robbed from our local, our state. But I had one other question here. So the survey, so two things. One, the survey that we're getting tonight was in Fresno land this morning before we got that. Is there a reason why that happened?
They read the agenda for the board package tomorrow. Or tomorrow, I'm sorry, yes, for the board meeting. Yeah, it was in the board meeting.
Just kind of seems helpful that we would get it, if we're the ones kind of steering it, that we
Yeah.
would get it first before the public got it, so that the Fresno land doesn't steer the discussion of, oh, this is what they talked about, why are you going against what everybody said, when it's kind of obscure.
It's just a snapshot.
It's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
It's not right that the public got it before we got it, right? So, but second of all, the values that we talked about and the investments in neighborhoods, but particularly public transportation, if you could pull that slide up. 78% of the respondents selected expanding buses and public transportation services as very important. That means 3 out of 4 people, 78 out of 100 said, let's expand buses. I don't know anybody that wants to expand buses. And when I'm looking at the buses, in fact, as I pulled the data shows that ridership is down. And as I'm talking to people, they're saying, in my own community, they're saying, the kids are saying, I'm not riding that bus to work. I'm going to Uber. Right. Who did we poll for this?
Let's let Dr.
Just
Pacheco answer it.
2 questions. Who did we poll? And what was the question that promoted 78% of the people to say, I want more public transit?
So 2 things. So to answer your questions, first of all, when we think about this question, it is about how people think was important. We asked a number of things as they were important. So we asked, do you think fixing our roads is important? Do you think public transportation is important? I also want to mention that in your files, so not printed here today, but in your electronic files, you actually have access to a much more comprehensive slide deck where it does show you the exact way in which people answered this particular question, but also other questions. So to your second question around why.
What was the actual question? Is what my first
Yeah,
question.
so he's pulling up the exact language so that I am completely accurately answering your question. I also want to note that when we talk about public transportation with people, again, the first round of surveys, which was over 650 surveys and which you can see reflective in the map that is in that slide too, in terms of who, that would be the who in that map. They mentioned that because we asked them, if you don't use public transit, tell us why not. And then they answered a series of questions, and we have that for you in that more comprehensive slide deck that is available to you electronically.
So I get that, and I'm waiting for the question, but that you asked, but I would venture to say that this is probably the most diverse group you're gonna get of 40 some odd people. I don't think anybody's gonna disagree with that. And not one of us rode the bus here.
Right, and that's the
I'm
thing.
just,
is that
there's demographics all the way across the board from people that make seven figures in this room.
I don't think
Wait,
you're
wait,
capturing.
Like,
you're-
just-
we're
I'm
not-
gonna stop
we're
you
not
both
gonna-
for just a
Hold on a
second.
second.
We're
No,
not
wait,
understanding.
Hold on a second.
Doctor, both of
wasn't
you, wait one
finished.
second. I know, wait, give me 1 second. I want to make it clear that that's not, none of the things that we're talking about today, with the exception of the RTP, were statistically valid. And I think that's where you're kind of going.
But, well, I get it, but you're talking about
It
statistics.
can't be
but-
statistically
but-
valid because
but
it's not a random sampling.
What I'm saying is that the numbers that we're putting out here is that the verbiage says 78% of the people responded. They want to expand public transit. And
Mhm. So can I answer the question? Because I do have the
Yeah.
full question
Yeah,
pulled up.
please.
Okay, this 78% again was from our phase 1 data where we had over 600 people. And in terms of the who, you can see it on the map that has our zip codes particularly. So you can see all across the county is where we had, I don't know where in the slide deck the maps are, but you can definitely see that for yourself. So that's the who, and the question is how important because we asked a number of public transportation. So we said, how important are the following public transportation improvements to you? Rate each one from not important to very important. And we asked expanding bus and public transit services, improve commuter support, expanding regional transit services. So we asked it in the context of public transportation because, again, we asked questions in phase 1 within the context of just roads. We asked context of just public transportation, just active transportation, just sidewalks.
I understand that, and I appreciate you giving that to me. All I'm saying is the question really, if it's 78% want to expand it, would have been a little bit closer to the truth if we would have said, do you ride the bus? Do you need more services? And would you like to see it expanded? Because if they say, I don't ride the bus, you're out, right? Because if you don't ride the bus, you really don't know what people riding the bus need.
Brooke, I'm going to
Unless you're
pause you for
asking
just a second to let Nyman chime in there. Nyman?
Well, I think that if we are just gonna throw our own perspectives here and say, I don't ride the bus, and therefore nobody rides the bus. I lived in a city where there was good public transportation, that's Mexico City, and I used the public transportation every single day of my life. Since I moved to Fresno, I am not able to because it doesn't take me, I don't have routes, I don't have anything. So I don't think it's accurate to state that, oh, well, people don't have it and therefore it sucks, so we don't need to do it. And when we talk about public transportation, it's not only those big buses, the fax buses that take you from point A to point B. It can be a modality of other sources of public. The word is public, meaning that you don't need to own a car, go and pay to the dealer so much for a car so that you can go to point B and to point A. And I wish you could have been in some of those rural areas where we have this meeting, where they might not have any car, or they might have one car. They're not privileged. They're not millionaires that can go and buy a car or as many cars as they want. And they're still relying on public transportation. Not necessarily a big bus, but a public means of transportation.
Just so that you
Before
have
we-
the full thing, so you know where to reference in my other slide deck that's available electronically to you, it will be slide 20. And the question was, if you don't use public buses or transit, why not? 30% said, I prefer using my car or another form of transportation. But as I mentioned before, 49% mentioned other systemic barriers, such as either it takes too long to get where I need to go, or public transit does not go where I need it to, or there is no easy way to get to or from a bus, train stop from my home or destination. So I wanted to clarify that's where you can find it, and those are the
Thank
the
you. It'll be in
percentages
in
you'll
the
see
piece.
there.
I'm going to go to Wyatt and then over to Dr. Powell.
Just quick on the questions as far as all this polling goes. From what Brooke was saying, it's starting to look to me like whether it's transportation or the roads or whatever the questioning is, it doesn't sound like you guys had an option for this doesn't matter to me. Or get what I'm saying? Like like they don't have a preference on like they're
Yeah,
forced
they
to answer
could
the
they
question.
could actually
leading-
write not
leading to
very
these
important.
percentages.
Yeah, they could actually, it was the options for the categories was not important, somewhat important, or very important.
And it does
So they
depend.
did have the option.
It does depend. You'll get a chance to look at all those. I don't want to get too far down on this because I want to point out again that the data, these are snapshots that relate to these types of segments. They're not necessarily the preference. It's not saying that 78% of the people said that's how much money should go to transit. It's talking about people said that that was important to them of the people they talked to. Dr. Crowell?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can put this particular discussion to bed because even in the statistically valid results from 2020 and 2024, people ranked bus service alone 7 to 8 out of 10 on importance. And so even with the data that's more valid, we're seeing that people see this as a high priority. Maybe not as high as roads, but nobody's saying that their data came out higher than roads. But it is important to people.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying it's not important. If you ask me, hey, do you think buses are
Brooke,
important?
I'm going to ask
Absolutely.
you to wait and tell you're called on. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I apologize. Naomi? I'm going to screw that up, I'm sure. I apologize for that. But I think their point is very well taken. Thinking in a more global context of publics, it's not just buses. So I think that's a good way to think about that. I don't want to step back. I think everybody will agree to this. Let's
Health and safety.
turn it back.
I want to
roads.
speak to you about the bilingual
Turn it back to roads for a second. I'm
of
a little
Santa
confused
Fe.
about
The
this.
process.
Okay.
All right, who's that?
I don't know. I think they might have muted themselves. I'm a little confused about something, and maybe Kyle can help me with this. So basically, if you look at this most recent allocation, it works out to about 30.1% are available to local communities for potholes, basically, for roads. There's 15.3% for potholes, 14.8% for flexible funding, which allows for potholes. So if a local community wanted to, they could spend 30.1% of the money on potholes, roads. What I need to know is what was the PCI in 2006? And we're at 65 now. My understanding from reading the annual report that there has been a significant improvement over time under the current measure. I don't know what it was though. It just says it was a significant improvement from whatever it was to 65. That's one question. Where was it? How is that trend line going up? And I just want to put it in context. I'm not saying what the right number is. I just want to put it in context that, okay, if we went from whatever the number is, 50 to 65, putting 30% toward roads, okay, do you need 80%, 90% to improve it to 70%? That seems the numbers don't seem to work in my head. The other thing I'm kind of curious about, and again, these are projections. I am not a statistician. I don't know how precise these are, but to jump from 50, the last measure that was not successful, I got 58%. They said if you allocate half of the money toward roads, we'd get to 70. Mm-hmm. And just a couple of years later, all of a sudden it spiked 10%, which is a very significant spike. We're talking, I'm guessing, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in a very short time frame. That makes me like, do the numbers work there? I'm a little curious as to why that such a big spike. So two questions. Yep. What was the PCI when we started this thing in 2006, was the most recent measure, and it got to 65 based on a 30% allocation to roads? And second, I'm still frankly not convinced as to how you got from 50% will get you to a 70 PCI to just a few years later, now it's 60 or 70% to get to the same 70 PCI.
So on the first point on the 2006 number, I'll have to pull that. We don't have that today here. I'll have to look back at our archives and pull PCI analysis that were done at that time to evaluate that.
Can you give me some kind of general number? Were we at 50? Were we at 60?
I mean, generally, yes. So the road condition was at the, in the upper fair category. We've never been in the very poor, and we've never really been in the above 70 range. So we've been in this kind of fair condition for quite some time. But to your second point on the cost, and I had similar concerns about this huge increase. A lot of it is driven by inflation that we've seen just in the last 4 years, historic levels of inflation that I think we all recognize has occurred. That has occurred in between the last analysis and this.
I lived in the late 70s and early 80s. This is not historical inflation. 20% is historical inflation.
Yeah, it's true, but the dollar today is more inflated than it was in 1970, right? So in terms of the inflation, yes, you're right that there was a higher percentage rate in the 70s and 80s. What I will say is that when I talked to our consultant about this particular concern, and I'm not, you should all have the July 10th meeting, the analysis that showed the per square yard cost increases from 2020 to 2024. It jumped from $28 per square yard to $41 per square yard. Before that time, we had never seen anything like that kind of increase in your average per square yard road maintenance cost, right? So it increased maybe a couple of bucks every two or few years, but we saw a massive increase in the last 4 years with inflation.
Yeah, I see. I was going to ask you, Brooke, about that.
Well, I do roads every day.
Yep.
And we didn't get a 13% increase. There's not 13% increase across the road. And what road are we talking about?
This was an analysis that NCE had done throughout the state of California. So this is using square yard maintenance costs throughout the state.
But costs in San Jose are different than costs in Fresno County. When you're paving in Fresno County, you're paving straight, right? A squirrel could go straight, and you're paving normally the overlays, and so they're extremely cheap and reasonable in Fresno County. The costs of inflation have not jumped in Fresno County from 27 or 28 to 41 or 42 that you talked about. That is not a good number. We've got operating engineers in the room. This guy has the people on the job. Did it increase? Are your contractors telling you it went up that much? Because asphalt has not. Is the labor involved with this? Are you guys the guys that caused this problem? Chuck and right.
I mean, I will.
So because it's not in the products, I'm just trying to figure. It's not in the trucking, right? It's not in the trucking. It's not in the labor. I mean, you guys have gone up like $4 or $5 in 4 years, and it's not in the product. So where's the money?
Also, if you're saying
Where are the numbers coming
if
from?
the numbers are going from 28 to 41, that's $13. Quick math is that's 46% increase. That seems, I don't know. It's not
Yeah,
my.
I had some. I mean, I'm not an expert in asphalt or material costs. I mean, I'll have to get back to NC on how they got their assumptions. This was provided to us by our pavement management consultant that does this full time throughout the state of California. So yes, I will say on the capital cost side, throughout the transportation industry, we have seen massive increases in capital costs. This has occurred. Ask Caltrans, ask any transportation agency in California. We've seen huge increases in capital costs. Ask High Speed Rail. We've seen massive increases at High Speed Rail. So generally, there has been large increases in the capital cost of projects within the last 5 years. I mean, this is something that has occurred and has been generally reported throughout the media for the last several years.
Okay, other questions about this data or anything else before we, oh, hello, thank you. I can't see that. Brenda, can you, hold on here. Thank you. Hold on, give me just a second. I'm looking for. Karen, Eddie, Mark, anybody have any questions or comments online? Not at the moment. Okay, Lee, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, and I talked about it briefly before. I couldn't remember the numbers, but I was involved in the 2022 renewal effort, and I think the PCI at that time was 57, and now it's 60, over 60. What happened to make it go up so much?
I don't believe it was 57. I think it was 62 or 63. But we have the 2021 report, and that's something I can easily pull for you.
I don't have it, so
Yep.
If you could clarify that, and that kind of fits with what Mark mentioned as back in 2006.
Yep.
So we'll take a look at some of that, perhaps get an update at the next meeting. I do want to take a moment to do a little discussion here just in general. Has everyone signed up on the Menti piece of it at this point in time?
I have a question.
Yep.
I have more of a comment. I think just taking it back to the general priorities and taking a look at all the data, on balance, it sounds like no matter if you go back to the map that had both, the green one that looks at both T for all and POG engagement, that's a big broad, um, broadly representative of the county. And what struck me based on the presentation and all the Build a Plan survey tool, the presentation by Dr. Pacheco Warner and the survey that was done, there on balance, there seems to be consistency across local streets and roads are priority, but local streets and roads and neighborhoods and existing communities, there's consistency and priorities for public transit, public transportation. And by that, nobody necessarily means big buses going out to get to point A and point B, to Naomi's point about the importance of looking at different modes of public transit that will look differently. And if we're up, like if it could also look differently with respect to how we comply with fare box ratio requirements. It doesn't put you in a big bus. It doesn't get people to where they need to go. And then there's also a lot of consistency around safety, accessibility, trails, shade. So it feels like some of these broad, there seems to be grouping of themes that we should think about. And when people talk about regional connectivity, at least as we've heard it, is regional connectivity and getting to places that people want to be able to get between and across cities and communities. I mean, and not just from Huron to Fresno, for example. It could be Huron to Orange Cove as a way to connect people and give people a real choice in how they choose to travel. So I just wanted to, maybe that's where you're going, the discussion and action. There seems to be some groupings of themes and categories that speak to what residents have said they want.
Well, I think it's exactly where I'm going. And I think we're going to try to get to some broad numbers tonight, but I think it'll be interesting to see. And this is also for the folks online. And when I say folks online, I mean the people on the steering committee. So if you open up your Menti on your phone, and we've given you the code, it's in front of you. What I'm going to ask you to do, what? No, I want to see if we can get this one done. I want to move. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, and I'm going to ask you to rank these in order. And so whichever one you pushed first, whichever one you put second, third, fourth, fifth, and then as they go up, right, we're going to be able to see a little snapshot. And then we're going to talk generally about some of the percentages and allow you to do that. So for each one of these things, local streets and roads, bike lanes, walking paths, you're already getting the hang of it. Safe routes to schools, larger regional projects, transit bus or other. You'll notice it asks you to put a name in there, and that's really just to make sure that we've only got steering committee members. I want to be very clear on this. This is a snapshot of what we're talking about tonight. I have every belief that this may change, but it was the cleanest way I could figure to count 35 people's votes at the same time. So we'll all go there together. If you do not have a phone or you need some assistance, I know Nick is getting some assistance here right now. Does everybody else have it okay? Okay. I wanted to play the cute Jeopardy music, but I didn't remember to bring it. So, or I have an entire Spotify song list that's all transportation themed songs. It has everything from the wheels go round and round on the bus to leaving on a jet plane. Happy to share that with you at the end of the night. Okay. Oh, thank you, whoever came up with that. Oh, thank you so much, Adam. Okay. All right, we got 15 to 31. I want to get all of you in there. And you can see how this is popping up. One of these things, and I think it kind of goes just as well, we're getting this in there, it kind of goes to some of the stuff that Dr. Pacheco Warner was going, I use the example for like Christmas, people want everything, but at the end of the day, there are going to be decisions and trade-offs made because, you can't always have everything. We don't have enough money for everything. So we've got to do these kind of priorities, but we can see that a lot of these things are important. All right, I'm 19 of 31, so a few more folks to weigh in on this. We've been doing this exercise with the public on multiple occasions. They seem to really like it too. Karen, you got a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying, sorry. So I'm on a remote device, but it's not a cellular phone. So what did you want me to do? Or do you want to vote for me?
Okay, if you look at an email that I sent you earlier today, I can't
Oh.
tell you it's on the line because we don't
Okay.
want everyone watching at home to get on the Mentimeter and skew the vote. So
Okay.
if you open up the email from earlier today, you'll see that there's a menti.com, and then we gave you a code so you could access it.
Okay.
And Shada, if you're listening as well, you could also just send that information to Karen right now.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We're getting so close. And what I'm finding interesting is that as this is now stacking up, it's kind of what we've been seeing. I think actually this might be one of our more pleasant workshops, because as we go through this, I think we're going to find, as Veronica said, a bit more commonality. Okay, so we've got 26 of 31. We've got Mark's hand. Okay, has everybody in the room entered their choices? I'm just looking around. Nope, okay.
Fiddling around with
All right.
passwords and enter code to verify your, whatever the hell it says.
Okay,
Got no idea.
Yeah, the hand raise on Zoom.
okay.
Oh, they put it.
Yeah, it was Karen.
Yeah. What code are they talking about?
Oh, I want you to go to your, you have your email on here?
Okay.
Okay.
Mark and Karen and Eddie, have you guys all been able to load up your things online?
No, I can't find the email, so that's okay.
Okay.
I
well,
just
let's-
sent it to you again, so hopefully if you refresh,
Again,
it should be
yeah,
there.
It's just a snapshot. It won't be the end all be all, but get used to this platform because we are going to be using it again. Okay. Chuck, were you able to get your stuff on? Okay. And while we're waiting for that, did everybody get their expense reports for doing mileage and whatnot? I just want to make sure. And again, if you have any questions about that, please reach out to Shada. She can help you with that. Okay, 27, we got another couple folks in. We'll get Lee on board here and then we'll move along.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry? I know.
Okay.
That's why we were saying we got staff available to assist and to put this stuff together. He's in. Once you're in, you're in.
Okay, on this one, you'll wanna slide up, so you'll slide up.
First choice, second choice, third choice.
So you hold this.
The next ones are infinitely easier.
Prioritize,
Next up,
which ones of these?
local road investment. You got in there?
Just give me 2 more minutes.
Okay. It's all right.
Well, now make sure he gets his responses. Regional.
Okay, we got another 2 votes in. That's great.
Take care. Your next election be for priority.
And in case you're wondering, we are able to track like who does what, so we know that we've got the right amount of people. Do you guys use this at college? Something similar?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
This is really good.
It's a cool way to do it, yeah. It's easy to try and figure out. what it's doing. Okay. All right. See, it's the perfect snack break.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. So Lee, are you in?
We submitted.
Okay, there we go. All right, so you can see on these results, okay, this is just a general of the prioritization, and it really does mimic pretty much what we've been hearing all along. So now here comes one. I cannot wait for this one. I've been waiting for weeks. What percentage of Measure C funds should go to local neighborhood roads? These are not the big roads. These are, go ahead, Mark.
So I'm really uncomfortable with this. I think we're really jumping the gun here. We have not gone through the process and in my
We're
experience.
going to keep going on the discussion.
But it's what the
Yeah.
problem is, you are putting this down on paper. You're making a concrete line.
Nope.
That people are that, I think you are, and with all due respect, I think this is a major mistake in the way you're handling this. This is too early. You have to go through a process and you're running to a conclusion. With all due respect to my friend Brooke here, who wants to get to the answer because he's a business guy, and I get that. But the reality is, in my experience with mediating disputes,
Yep.
this is going to be really problematic.
I
So-
understand what you're saying, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me and remind the group that we are getting direction from the board, and there was a schedule that was set up, and we were asked to do these meetings with these particular topics over time. No one's going to get held to this at this point in time, but we're trying to figure out in general, what the range are of where people are at. So we're not coming here tonight to say it's going to be this, that, or the other, but the question is just in general, where people are at in terms of these investment categories by group. Go ahead, Veronica. I'm sorry. Good.
So what are you gonna do with this information?
We're
Where are
going
you
to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. So
Right.
let's,
I would like to know before even starting the exercise, if you don't mind.
absolutely. So the idea here is to get a snapshot in the room of sort of where people are at. So if we are all in agreement, for example, that roads are the top priority, and I believe we are, then the question is, okay, if that's a top priority, approximately what percentage should we be talking about? Because that is something this group is going to have to do. We're not going to walk away tonight with a hard number, but we are going to know kind of where people are at with this. Because if we don't have that conversation, then when we move to next week, which is basically the allocation by agency, then we're into implementation. We're on a fast track that was requested by the merge and then approved by the board to move at this pace. Our original plan was to take this out through the end of the year. And I agree, because, Mark, I got your email and I was like, I'm 100% agreed with you. That schedule was not, that is not the schedule that we've been put on by the board. I don't know if you want to address that at all, Robert, or.
Only to support that point, that this is a schedule that the board agreed to as part of the collaboration. And the intent of that is to have an expenditure plan roughly certainly by the end of September, October timeframe.
Mid-September was the date that we were requested. You can see where that is. I'm not going to not agree with you, Mark. It's challenging. So what we're asking, go ahead.
Question, when you say that was what the board agreed to, bringing everybody else in.
Yep.
What does that mean? That means it was their idea, everybody that came in here, not the board's idea to fast track this thing? And if that's the case, what's the reason?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I do. I think, the question was that when a smaller group of electeds, including the chair and vice chair of the Fresno Council of Governments, as well as representatives from the FCTA board and staff, and some other folks met with the T for All folks. And over a period of a month, there was a series of, shall we call, negotiations that went ongoing. And one of the things that was requested by the Transportation for All group was an accelerated schedule and the additional seats on this. And that group met with other folks repeatedly. I think both Robert and I met with Veronica and others. And then that was presented to the board, and the board was provided the new, I want to say, negotiated schedule, and the board gave us direction to move with that schedule at this pace.
So Kendall, I have a question
Yeah.
for you. How is it that 12 got to dictate to the 24? How did that happen, Robert? How did 12 people on the measure transportation for all?
They weren't on
get
the 12.
Well,
then,
hold on.
yeah.
I mean, the 12 that they put on there, how did T for all get to dictate the speed and the direction of this committee with the COG board? That's the question you're asking, right? Why? Well, what are we, patsies?
No, I don't think, I think that's.
But what's the purpose?
Yeah, the purpose, I believe, was to ensure, and I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else, but as we understood it, is that we had two potential competing measures that were going at the same time. And the concern was that if both of those measures moved forward, they were less likely to pass. And so the board gave direction at its April board meeting to meet with T for All and others and see if we could find a path. The question was, what if we have this conversation and we can't get on the same page for whatever reason, that we're not in agreement? Then they wanted to have time available so that if we have to break up and go again in two, that there would still be time to do that. That is my understanding of why that was done. Veronica, did you want to weigh in on that?
That's not entirely accurate. There was a request. The timeline, the original COG timeline had the COG itself not delivering a measure, a full measure to the public and every city council and county board of supervisors until spring of next year. So I believe
That's actually not accurate.
no, it is true based on your map. Your timeline that you had laid out with community engagement. No, it wasn't. It was going until March or April. If I remember that correctly, I have that document in my office. And so from an electoral calendar, if you don't have a final measure and you want to convince voters to support a measure and do community education around how they will benefit by voting yes on a measure, that's late. And so when T for All did have our process laid out, we started our process and launched our community engagement and public input component of helping develop a measure based on what residents want to see. We started that in May of actually late April of this year through phases, phase 1, phase 2, we're now in phase 3. We're now talking to residents across the county about components of the implementing guidelines of the measure to sort of be able to talk to residents and it be an iterative process that builds on that builds on one another. To Tanya's point earlier around, we asked these questions and people said these are priorities. So in phase 2, we went deeper and asked, well, what do you mean by that? That whole process led us into looking at what is the best way to get Measure C passed in Fresno County. One thing we all agree on is that Measure C should exist. We all believe that there are a lot of benefits that stem from Measure C if we do it right. And there's broad support for it. But in the current environment, it'll be really hard to pass a measure if there is no community buy-in or support for a measure. And that was the intent. And that was what was talked about with COG representatives and FCTA representatives in that room around being able to develop a public process that helps shape a measure that allows all of us to talk through it in order to deliver a plan that then goes to every city council and the county board of supervisors and the COG. And one of the things we heard loud and clear from elected officials throughout since the failure of the 2022 measure has been that electeds want to have a say and they want to be involved and they want to be engaged every step of the way. So we built a process that allows the Fresno COG Policy Board to get a report out at every stage of this measure. What is the vision? Electeds get to weigh in. What are the categories? Electeds get to weigh in. So they don't get a final plan at the end of the process without having had the opportunity to weigh in. That's why the structure and timeline was put in that way.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry for stirring the pot here a little bit, but we're in the grown zone.
Grown zone.
So when is kind of considered the drop dead date to have enough time to educate the public about what the measure is about? What's the drop dead?
In the original timing, I'm sorry, Veronica, please look it up, but that was incorrect. In the original timing, the COG process would have lasted through December of this year, and then we would have gone through
Okay, so
all
let's say
of
the
the
end.
agencies.
So let's say
Yeah.
the end of 2025.
Yeah.
So I think the confusion here that I'm seeing is that, okay, fine, if it's a compressed timeline, it just means we have to meet more. It doesn't mean we have 2 meetings and get to the answer. It means maybe we have 8, 10, whatever it takes in a compressed timeline, not every 2 weeks. So we
That's
can
why
get,
we doubled the meetings. And if
well,
you're
the
thinking
reality is this is a multi-billion-dollar measure going 20 to 30 years. We might want to put a little more effort into it. And so I would suggest if that's the timeline, if that's what you're saying, the end of the year, okay, fine. Let's all commit. And by the way, you're going to hate me for this, but we all got Saturdays. Whatever it takes to get a thoughtful measure on the ballot is the time and effort we should put into it. We shouldn't rush it.
Brooke.
So all due respect to my good friend Mark, but what I'm hearing is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Veronica, but what I'm hearing is that we're going to get this done in 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever their number is, whatever they negotiated, whatever T for all negotiated, so that they have time to put their measure on the ballot if they don't like what comes out of this group. And so, but she had mentioned, she brought up 2022. Let's make no mistake about it. Your group sunk 2022 along with David's group to put in $100,000 to sink Measure C. You guys put up 300 grand and sunk Measure C. This is the last straw for Measure C.
I understand what you're saying, but let's.
Hold on, we're in the
let's
groan
look
zone. We're
forward.
in the groan zone.
I understand, but let's groan forward.
I get it, but my point is that the reason this got expedited is so that they could have time to put a measure up. And this group didn't get consulted. They cut the deal. We didn't get the deal. And I think that that's part of Mark's frustration, though he can speak for himself. But the truth of the matter is they want to peek behind the curtain in 6 weeks and go, yeah, we don't like that. We're out. And we're going to do our own measure.
So
That's
I
what
just
happened.
want to reiterate again that Mayor Dyer and both of the chairs of the FCTA and COG board, I am not disagreeing with anything that has been said, but I will say this, we're going to have to start having these conversations. And so my opinion and my hope is that you will at least entertain the conversation tonight. We may not agree and we don't have to come to it an end. This is not the end all be all, but we need to have some place to start. And there's been incredible amount of outreach that's been done on both sides. We continue on. And so what I'd like to do is get back onto this and just see where we're at. And then we can discuss it. And if we've got great things that are different, we can move around from that. Go ahead, SB.
I just, I've been listening, but we need to, if we're gonna come up with assumptions, we're coming in with assumptions from the outside of this group did this, that, or whatever you're saying, that is wrong. And that is bad leadership. I'm an educator, I'm a school teacher, and you know what? When I go to a classroom, to me I see this as a classroom. There has to be some respect. Everybody comes with a different perspective. You know what I would love? I come from Mendota. That's where I grew up, Tranquility, San Joaquin. I would love to see those streets paved. That's my priority. Do you understand? Maybe your priority, I'm everybody, not just you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to everybody. Honestly, I don't even know who you are. But the point is, we have to be open-minded. If you're going to be in a box, we're going to come in a box here. We're not going to get anywhere. And if we're going to be accusing people of doing wrong things, we're not going to get anywhere. And that is wrong. And in a classroom, I teach the kids to be cordial, respectful. And I expect everybody to be here cordial and respectful if we're going to get something done. And if we're going to keep going to the past, it's like I tell people, I don't live in the past. I live in the present, looking at the future. And if you keep bringing the past, we're not going to get anything done. So I'm asking you, let's be cordial. Let's move forward.
Thank you. David.
Dave Rivas, Carpenters. Yeah, I just want to address a little bit about the hypotheticals that keep coming out here. I'm going to tell you right now from our perspective, and SB, you hit, keep going back. And then what I'm going to tell you right now, the intent was not to come back on the ballot and throw a 11th hour plan. There's no way the Carpenters Union would sign off on that. No way we're going to dump millions of dollars on that. That had to be a lot of responsibility that I would have to answer to. And being in those rooms, remember, Buddy had a lot to do with Accelerate too. We had more meetings. He didn't want to do them. And we all in there agreed. It was a compromise. There were two trains going on two different paths. And it was a compromise to come together with the two steering committee, respect each other, and go forward together. So yeah, it's accelerated, but bottom line is you just got to do the work. To Mark's work, we got to do the work. We got to get it done. So there isn't no alternative mode. I need to put that to bed right now. There is no way in hell the Carpenters Union will back any alternative motive we know will fail. And that's the bottom line. Yes, did we oppose it in 2022? Absolutely, because we were told, take your crayons and sit in the corner. That's what we were told. Now we're not there. Now it's the focus is to get this as one plan together on that ballot and get it passed. There is no alternative motive. And when this is all said and done, I will stand by that. Our organization will stand by that. So we need to stop going back and hypothetical what our good old boy groups are talking about.
Thank you. I think that at this point, and I understand the pain and the groan on this, but I'd like us to come back to these questions and answer them just to the best of your honest ability tonight. And let's see where we come out. It may be painful for some and it may work out better for others. I don't know. But right now, about half of you have taken the time to
Kendall,
set a percentage. Yes.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
if this is appropriate, because I really do feel extremely uncomfortable with giving a number at this point. Would you allow for some of us who feel uncomfortable to simply refrain from voting at this
Sure.
point? Okay, thanks.
But I just want to make you be prepared, everybody. At some point, you're going to have to weigh in on this. So and now's as good a time as any because we can all see this in there. Anyway, if you could go ahead and take a Mr. Now, you'll see on this one. Yep.
I just
Sorry.
have a quick question as you go through the exercises
Okay.
that, who directed that these be the categories?
They've been the ones that the talk has been going from the same time, but we can add others in. It's not a problem. If
So
you want
what-
to add something in, not a problem.
Okay, so maybe that's what Mark is, and I'm not adding to what Mark is saying. I'm just clear the categories, and do you have a definition for, so what do local neighborhood
So
roads?
local neighborhood roads, which I said at the beginning, were the smaller, like in your neighborhood, going to your school, not the larger connectors. And so just so you know, Veronica, where I'm going with this, like, let's say, for whatever reason, let's say we have a percentage here. Then the next question is, okay, within that category, what does that look like? Is it alleys? Is it local roads? Do we prioritize, as Dr. Pacheco said, do we prioritize those that are closer to schools? It just gets more and more refined as things go down. When we talk about bike and pedestrian, is that new roads? Is that existing? All those things. But we have to start out someplace on this in order to get, some type of thing. Go ahead, Kay.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that whatever comes out of this right now doesn't become a public document this is the percentage that was voted on
meetings
at
are
this
all
meeting.
public.
And I know,
Yeah.
but there should be some preface to that indicating this is a very tentative approach to developing some percentages based on a very early discussion.
Absolutely.
Because somehow numbers tend to take on a life of their own and become wedded in people's minds as this was the decision, this is what Measure C looks like. And I would hate to have that be the message.
This is more of just an exercise. So unlike, you're not going to see these numbers come out in terms of a document. Yes, go ahead.
So in the future, it would be helpful ahead of time to be prepared for these particular questions.
Okay.
So in the agenda that we would be prepared to ask, that we would be asked what these questions are. And I get that it is an exercise, which would be fine if this wasn't already a media circus. That if articles aren't coming out, jumping at different percentages and numbers, this is just another opportunity for people to make a big deal about something that's not done yet. So if we can have a better process leading up to it.
Okay, that's fair.
It would make me more comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
just to Veronica's point about the categories, you said this is an exercise, but what if we, after discussing everything that we are reading from the feedback of the two processes, what if we see that these might not be the right categories, that we're gonna come up with one more, and then how are we gonna scramble to redo all this voting already because we rush ourselves. I've been, I wasn't here in July, but I read through everything, and I don't think that this was a commitment or a request from the COG to have this exercise done today. And actually, I was very surprised to see that in the agenda for tomorrow. I thought we were just getting a consensus of the mission that we were going to move forward, and that was a commitment for tomorrow's meeting.
Okay, we actually agendized this and promoted this as this is the discussion, but I understand the reluctance there. Scott, what are your thoughts? He's like, run away. No. Can you use your microphone so we can hear it?
This is Scott Miller from the Chamber of Commerce. I think the people in this room are pretty educated about the topic, and it's okay to have preliminary opinions at this point.
Okay. Pastor Jones?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, I'll get you in just a second.
Yeah, today wild. Today's wild. This kind of throwing me off too. I voted, but because I'm just here for the process, right?
Okay.
But I think there's some past trauma and hurt happening. That I'm gonna pray next time before I come up in here, so we can get everybody gonna be
Hey,
right.
for this meeting, believe me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So but I think consensus, we just got to get on the same page and want the same thing. And I think we can make it happen. I'm here, not for no head motives. I'm thank God to be here. So yeah, just do this vote, man, so we can go on. So we can go on.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
I tend to agree with people who say I'd like to have gotten these materials in advance. I like the way COG runs their TTC and PAC agendas. They publish the agendas several days in advance with attachments. So those people who are interested in care can read the annotated agenda and look at the attachments and have time to digest the material rather than walk in and pick this up cold and then are asked to participate in these surveys without having a chance to think about it in advance. And there's a tendency for that what happens now gets frozen in concrete to a certain extent. So I,
Let me
I
propose
dislike,
an al-
I
yeah.
dislike this accelerated schedule. I dislike it intensely, but I definitely want these materials in my inbox, 4 or 5 days in advance. I have a chance to digest it and be aware that I'm going to be asked to vote on something like this, realizing it has a tendency, these things, to become precedent for later votes.
I think it's an excellent point, and let me suggest something that I think might help us all. So our team has to meet with the facilitation team and the synergy team, which isn't giving us enough time to get an agenda out. In this case, we just met last Wednesday, which means the schedule is compressed. So what I would suggest, and I'm open to anyone's thoughts on this, if we move this discussion to our meeting on the 14th, and that gives everyone more time to look at this material, to ask questions. We can then put the questions that we will be asking out to everybody, so you're very well prepared. And then if we need to call an additional meeting, to Mark's case, because I'm with you. I don't mind doing more meetings. Right now, we went from once a month to literally, I live in Fresno. It doesn't matter. I'm here anyway. But point being, would that make everybody feel a little bit better to give it some time? Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, I have a suggestion as well. We only have so many moving parts, right? We got roads, we got transit, et cetera, et cetera. It would help me to have a reference where the current measure is
Okay.
when we start asking the questions, because we're tweaking what's already taken place. Well, I mean, we're not creating a whole new measure.
Well, actually, I just want to clarify that we actually are creating a whole.
I understand, but you still got roads, you still got mass transit.
Yep.
It gives you a references where
So-
we are. And then the other thing that I asked previously, and you just brought it up again, so I'll bring it up again. The flow chart. You just made reference to facilitation group. What is that? Never heard of it. We work for COG, don't we? Question mark. What is this flow chart and these other groups? We have no key for the flow chart. It's just there.
So let me suggest, to address that, we'll provide the schedule updated and amended to give us a little more time for these things. We'll provide the potential questions you'll be asking. And just so everyone knows, what we were going to do tonight is take a look at bike, pedestrian, transit, other, and regional projects, and get a range of places where you kind of think the money might go. Not the specific, but just the kind of where you think it might go. And then we would have discussions about that. So if we pick up this whole discussion and move that to the 14th, does that make people feel a little bit more comfortable and give them more time to assess the information? Mark? No, I'm trying to address, I'm trying to give yourself some more time, everything, so you just separate you two. Go ahead, Lino.
So I'll bring it up. My
Like it.
concern personally, and I know there might be some other people, I don't work for a nonprofit. I don't work for a government agency. I work for a private individual. And I volunteered this time, or voluntold to do this committee. It was originally once a month. It was supposed to end in December. And then all of a sudden it got fast packed to this, which I asked my employer, like, hey, we agreed when I took the position, I would be gone once a month, and then it's now twice a month. And I work till 5 o'clock. So Saturdays are also work days too when things happen. It's not one of those professions where, I make sure the plant's running. So, and I don't know who else is in there. I might be the only one out here, but just keep that in mind when we go move forward these meetings and stuff, that we are all volunteers. I mean, well, most of us are volunteers, and then we still have our own responsibilities. And my backup she works just as much as I do, if not more. So it's kind of one of those things. So I just ask to keep that in mind.
I totally understand. That's kind of what I'm saying. We are going to have these discussions, which is going to be the percentages at some point. And we're not going to be able to stretch that out over another 6 or 8 weeks. We have to get there in order to make the pieces going forward. So I think we've given ourselves some room in the back end as it's set up right now to have some discussions. If we have to call additional meetings, we can talk about doing that. But I think based on what is out here tonight, I'd rather push this discussion till the 14th, have you all take a look at it. I'll send you out the questions in advance. And what helps me is that means that when we have our facilitation meeting next week, I'm not planning for the 14th. I'm actually planning for the 28th, which then gives me enough time to get things out to you, because right now I don't have enough time because we have to wait for everybody to triple stamp approve things. So it's just the way it's a process. This is messy. I mean, it just is messy. But we're doing the best we can. And I think at the end of the day, you all did agree, I believe, that we're trying to do something together. And I'm going to reiterate, we're trying to do something looking forward. So looking backwards does not help us. It is not productive. Some of you people have said really nasty things about each other over the years. And to be honest, it's not productive. We don't care now. We just want to all go forward, right? And get something that we can all work on together, right? Whether we're groaning or smiling. Does that work for everybody? Okay. Mark, a nod? Yes.
That works. I would just like to make a suggestion, and Brooke actually said this earlier, which is putting out the numbers out to the policy board before it comes here, I think undermines the process. So just in the future, if we respect that process, so it allows us to have a conversation before going to the policy board, because then to Simon's point, it does become a media circus when that starts to happen.
This a circus? Surely you jest. All right, well, let me come back to something that is hopeful that we could pop it in. Actually, Veronica, if I could get you to look at this again. Don't tell me I lost it. I'd like to come back to the question of the vision. So give me just a second here to pull that back up. Maybe that's a place that we can, give me just a second here. Okay. I'm going to go for what I hope will be an easy win first. These are the 4 priorities. This was what you guys came up with at the last time. Now, yes, we will flesh these out further with more narrative, but this one particular one went 32 and 2 for people that thought it was a good idea. That's basically, and we've heard it, support community health and resilience, enhance public safety, ensure accessibility and access for all, and make equitable investments. These are priorities for the Measure C plan. As we sit today, does anybody online or in here disagree with those priorities? Go ahead, Mike. Yeah, okay. Yep, go ahead, Brooke.
So Measure C's for roads. It's a tax for roads. I don't know how it's a tax for roads, and it's whether you're riding a bus, you're riding a bike, it's for roads. And
now let him,
or you want to speak, go ahead and
yes,
speak.
Well, let
So,
finish.
but support community health and resilience. We're not community hospital. Enhance public safety. It's not a public safety tax. Ensure accessibility and access for all. Any business, any city, any county has to have ADA accessible handicap ramps, path of travels, all the way through. So it's mandated by law. It's not mandated by Measure C, and make equitable investments. And equitable investments mean that basically to the roads, in my opinion.
And in the last, you weren't at that meeting, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but the subheading of every single one of these things prioritize local roads, every single one of them.
How does community health and roads go together?
Well, community health, if you drive, I think you were the one that said you needed dentistry after riding on the roads because they were such bad.
But that's what it means. If it's talking about dentists, and maybe we're there.
No, I mean,
because
that's,
it's bad,
the context is. the
but this
context
is not my priorities.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
let's go back there. Niam, Amy?
Yeah, well, I think we, maybe with exception of Mr. Brook, understand really well how all this is connected to public health. If, you know, a lot of these roads, what do they have in these roads? Cars that are polluting the air. We live in the most polluted air basin in the entire United States. That leads to a lot of health problems. And I can go on and on, but
No,
I just
let's
want to
not,
say
let's
that.
not go on and on because we had a
Yes,
robust
but
discussion
the
about
thing
this
is-
last month.
Is he said those are no priorities for him. This is about an
We'll take a
inclusive
vote.
process,
We'll-
okay?
okay.
So we need to
Okay.
take into consideration that, and that we're not talking only about roads. That was the whole issue of the mission as well. This is about public transportation systems, not roads.
So I want to go back up also here to the piece, and I apologize, Veronica, because I know that you and Wyatt had some ads in there. I believe that we talked about Measure C supports reliable, safe, equitable.
Measure C envisions a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure and transportation system that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely regardless of mode.
Okay, and
I just merged the two options you have.
that's what I thought. What am I missing here? And transport. Thank you. Does that capture it? Why, can you live with that? Okay. Okay, Lena?
My only concern is we wanted this measure to pass. And I understand people, voters, citizens, and they know it's the road tax. We know I don't know why we're afraid to say the road. But the whole idea is to appeal to the voter. They're gonna read this opening statement and that little paragraph that we all get in the little ballots that we get every year. And I don't think if they don't see the actual road.
So this is not the ballot language, just so you know, this is not the ballot language. The ballot language
Then
you'll
forget
see
I said
see
anything.
later. This is basically, yeah, this is basically when we do the whole plan, it basically says, you know, here's our vision, right? And then within it, I mean, to be honest, and I don't want to diminish the importance of having a vision, but it's kind of like when you flip to the end to see how much something cost or what the thing is.
Yeah,
That's where they're gonna go, so. Measure C envisions a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure and transportation system that enables all residents to travel efficiently and safely regardless of mode.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Gail.
I just want to emphasize, I've been to so many public meetings in over 20 years. All they care about is the map. This is transportation, people's houses. 395 pages we wrote of environmental impacts that could impact resources. They don't care. They're going to look at the map and go, how is this going to affect me? Don't get caught up on this. They're not going to read it. They don't care. They're going to want to know where the money's going. Bottom line. And I'm telling you, I've seen it.
I don't think you're wrong.
I'm not. That's all they
Okay,
care about.
with the group, so we can get something off the table tonight. Yes, Lee?
After transportation systems, can't we put paren, including roads. Almost every time we get feedback, when they talk about what's most important, what comes first? Fix the potholes. Where are the potholes?
Okay, I think. Sorry. Um. What if we switched infrastructure to connected roadway network or connected roads?
Just some term
Okay,
in there. with
I'm
the-
looking over here. Yeah. Veronica. Go ahead, Nick.
I think I'm listening to the wind. I view Measure C as a transportation measure, not strictly a street and roads measure. It's a transportation measure that speaks to a transportation system that addresses many different modes.
And that's why we have both of them in there, because we have a lot of people that also care about the
I
roads.
repeat what I said an hour
Yeah.
ago. The road system supports several different modes: transit, bikeways, as well as the single occupant vehicle and 18-wheelers. And I view the single occupant vehicle and light trucks and 18-wheelers, those are modes. And the thing they have in common with active transportation and transit is they all use streets and roads, but Measure C is not a streets and roads tax, it's a transportation tax. And so I tend to become very distraught when I hear people referring to Measure C as a streets and roads tax. No, it's a transportation tax.
I think something we have to keep in mind for everyone is that that is exactly what it is for you, and it may be something completely different for Brooke and something completely different for Gail. So I'm going to ask us not to get too hung up on the semantics at this point. When you look at what's on the screen right now, is this something that the group can live with? Because I'd like to call the question and see if we can have just an up or down on this, a yay or nay, and move ahead. And again, keeping in mind that we may come 4 weeks from now and there may be something else that comes up. But for right now, Measure C envisions a reliable, safe, equitable, and connected infrastructure and transportation system. Infrastructure infers roads. It's part of the roadway network that enables residents to travel efficiently and safely, regardless of mode, and these 4 areas of priorities. So I'd like to ask for a verbal vote on that if we can. We okay with that? Okay, let's start with you, SB, and please say your name and it's a yes or no vote.
SB Sandoval, yes.
SB is a yes. Lee DeLapp?
Did I hear you say roads in there?
Infrastructure is infer for roads.
Did
I'm
you?
just making you a shirt. This is road.
No, but I mean, it's not up there,
No, no,
but it says it in what you wrote.
no, I'm just saying right now we're leaving it as infrastructure because infrastructure includes roads.
No.
Okay,
Chuck Kalinga, yes. Pastor W. Jones, yes.
Sarah Montemayor, yes.
Scott Miller, yes.
Nain Martinez, yes.
Gail Miller, yes.
Mark Kepler, yes.
No.
Joseph Amador, yes.
Esmeralda Diaz, yes.
Amber Crowell, yes.
Dee Rivas, yes.
Lino, yes.
Wendy Osborne, yes.
Alexander Naranjo, yes.
Evelyn Morales, yes.
Bill Niger, yes.
Darren Rose, yes.
Kay Burkin, yes.
Nicholas Palladino, yes.
Jen Garrett, yes.
Veronica Garibay, yes.
No.
Mandeep Chahal, yes.
Simon Biasel, yes.
Adam Holt, no.
Sharmua, yes.
okay, can I go to the folks online? Mark Scott,
Yes.
Karen? Is Karen still
No.
on? Okay. Eddie,
Yes.
do you have anyone else online? Okay, so the votes are 27 for and 5 against, and I believe that takes us to our piece. Let me just double check that. I have to use a calculator. Please don't laugh, but it's that time of day. Okay, so that passes with 84% of the steering committee in favor. So we'll be letting the board know tomorrow night that that's what we're going to do moving forward. And then if we need to come back and look at something later, we will certainly do that. Our August 14th meeting, we will revisit the information about the different allocations, and we'll send out all the questions for you in advance of that. We'll also be sending you some different links and whatnot. And I want to thank you for your patience and for your cordiality and for playing nicely for the most part with each other tonight. So I will see you next month. Meeting adjourned. I don't know about that, but-